This year, our keynote speaker is Fire Chief Les Stevens from the San Marcos Fire Department. Chief Stevens is a career fire service professional with more than 27 years in this business, currently serving as the Fire Chief in San Marcos. He began as a volunteer in 1988. He joined the Garland Fire Department in 1991. He promoted through the ranks to battalion chief before he jumped ship to go to the other side. Chief Stevens is a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program and holds the Chief Fire Officer designation from the Center of Public Safety Excellence. Seriously, I can't even look at you and think of that.
I know, right?
That's amazing. He's a published author and speaker for Fire Engineering Magazine and Firehouse.com. And with all those accomplishments, what is most impressive is his love and passion for the fire service. 2 years ago, Chief Stevens heard Andy Allison speak at FDIC and instantly began advocating for Andy and trying to make his life better. Since that time, he started a dialogue with the Texas Department of Insurance to try to close some gaps and some service quality issues with workers' comp in Texas. He's also started that dialogue through the Texas Fire Chiefs Association and also the International Association of Firefighters. Les Stevens loves the fire service and he loves firefighters. It's my honor to present this year Chief Les Stevens.
You're not the only one that reads those things and goes, are we talking about the same guy? I appreciate the kind words, Chief. One of the things that I do think I can always fall back on is I've never worked a day in my life. I was lucky enough to find the fire service at 16 years old. I got hired very young, and it's come easy since then. I enjoy getting up and getting to do what I do every day. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this morning. First off, I'd like to thank the City of Lewisville and the Lewisville Fire Department for hosting this event. I came here as a student in 2009. They're always a class act. The city, the fire department always puts their best foot forward. So to Chief Tittle and his staff, thank you, sir. City Manager, thank you as well. We appreciate y'all giving us this opportunity. Next, I'd like to thank Chief McGrath for giving me this few minutes this morning to spend with you. We've had a pretty good run the last year or so, as he mentioned, trying to work on Andy's behalf and on behalf of some other firefighters that we've come across that are having some difficulties with these situations. But I appreciate you, sir, giving me this opportunity. It would be easy for me to stand up here this morning with a mouthful of sour grapes and rant and rave about how disappointed I have been, not only recently, but numerous times throughout my career in what we all affectionately call the brotherhood. But I'm not going to do that. It wouldn't be productive. I've had about 2 months or more to prepare for my speech this morning, and I've had plenty of time to ponder and reflect on exactly what it is I want to say, how I want to say it, and most importantly, what it is I want you to do with the information when you leave here. I'd like to take you back to the spring of 1992 in my paramedic class at UT Southwest Medical School. But first I need to back up even a little further than that. I graduated high school 1 semester early in order to enroll in the Tarrant County Fire Academy and EMT program. For those of you that can remember back that far, we were class number 2 after Jim Nichols left. I can remember, I have a pretty decent memory. I was only 17 at the time, so it might not come as a surprise that in the ignorance of my youth, it seemed like a great idea to see if I could pass EMT school without ever unwrapping the textbook. I did. I think I even made an A. I was hired by the Garland Fire Department in March of 1991. Up until that point, I hadn't had any desire to become a paramedic. Truth be told, I probably didn't really know the difference between EMT and paramedic. But now that I was surrounded by them, working for a department that operated a fire-based EMS system, I had the bug. It might have been that I just thought the red patch looked cooler on the blue uniform than the blue one. But the sooner the better. I volunteered and sent the second group out of 3 students out of my rookie school. We were in a class of 24 Dallas fire recruits, 3 mesquite recruits, and a small handful of private pay. Remember that EMT book? Turns out there was some pretty important information stuck inside the cellophane. We took our first test in paramedic school on the first day of class, and I failed my first paramedic test the very same day. When I wrote this, I didn't know the individual that I'm going to speak about was going to be here this morning, but good, luckily it's all true. I failed every single quiz and every exam, except the midterm and the final. It wasn't due to lack of studying. It wasn't that I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be there more than anything in the world. I was skipping lunch and going to get extra tutoring from the instructors. I was studying late into the night and all weekend. I wrote note cards. I read and reread every chapter. No matter what I did, it seemed I was always a few points shy of a passing score. What was at stake? My job. At that point in time, you only got one shot. If you failed, you were fired, no questions asked. About halfway through the class, I remember an academy commander coming from the Dallas Fire Department to talk to us. Talk in that sentence is French for chew our asses. I'd never met him, didn't know who he was, or how what he would share with us in the next few minutes would change my entire career. Furthermore, I didn't work for him, and somehow I still knew that I wasn't magically exempt from what he had to say, and that just tuning him out probably wasn't an option either. Captain Grant began by asking, if you're passing, stand up. The majority of the class, probably 25 or 30 students, stood up. He told them, all right, now sit down. And they did. He says, now, if you're failing, stand up. Myself, 2 out of the 3 guys from Mesquite, and about 4 Dallas guys all stood up. He said a few not so nice things about our DNA, offered a few uneducated guesses as to why we were so dumb. I don't remember wanting to debate it with him at the time, though. But what he did next was the kicker. He told everyone who was passing to stand back up. As they rose out of their seats, we sat down. He instructed them to look around. Myself and the other flunkies seated as we'd been instructed to do. And he exclaimed, it's your fault they're failing. Hell yeah. I knew I was going to like this guy. What in the hell? It's their fault I'm failing? I like it. I thought to myself, he went on to explain that this was a group effort. We were there as individuals, yes, but as a class, we should all pass or fail together. He instructed the smart kids to each adopt a moron, and it was their job to make sure we all passed together. It was the first paramedic class in the history of the Southwest Paramedic School that every single Dallas recruit passed. You're probably wondering how the hell I'm going to tie this into brotherhood. Well, here goes. In thinking about this speech, I kept coming back to the know your audience part. I kept coming back to the conclusion that I'm preaching to the choir. You guys and gals that are here, you get it. You have a passion for this job. You are the ones who are passing. But just like Stuart Grant told the smart kids in paramedic school, it's your fault they're failing. I'm always a fan of teaching people how to think, but in this case, I think we should teach people what to think. A sticker on your car, a stupid t-shirt, as most of you know I'm not fans of, or playing in the annual golf tournament isn't brotherhood. Brotherhood is realizing that we are here as individuals, but we all will fail or succeed together. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to share a couple of stories that I think will illustrate what the brotherhood is about in the most extreme of cases. On Tuesday, June 28, 2011, while attending the Texas State Association of Firefighters Conference, which was being hosted in San Marcos, Jason Payne and 3 other Grand Prairie firefighters found themselves with a tough decision to make. It was June in Texas. Chief Tittle gave you the forecast, about the same. They had just arrived at the conference on Monday, had gotten settled in, and were looking forward to a great week of networking, legislative talks, votes on dues increases, 143 discussions, and some good fellowship. But before they got too bogged down in the business of the week, they decided to skip out on the Tuesday afternoon session and make the short drive down to Green, because that's what you do in Texas in the summertime when you're 15 minutes from the Guadalupe River. So they all pile into Jason's F-1000 pickup and head to Rock and R to float the river. As they got out of the truck in the parking lot, Jason noticed a large bulge on the sidewall of the driver's side front tire. They made the decision to wait and change the tire after they had floated the river. This way they could get back in the river and cool off again after changing the tire. A few short hours later, all done with the float, returned to change the tire. Have I mentioned anything about East Texas rednecks yet? Like all good East Texas rednecks, you can only be in the club if you keep a loaded lever action 30-30 under the back seat of your F-1000 pickup. Oh, and a bullet in the chamber, just in case. Jason had rationalized to himself that it was safe and would not fire since the hammer had to be pulled back and the lever had to be depressed against the stock in order to release the trigger. So it was safe. Right? He went to retrieve the jack from behind the passenger side seat, which also happened to be the same side as the barrel of the 30-30. The barrel was in the way, so he grabbed it and moved it out of the way. Damn it, it went off. Initially, he didn't realize what had happened. He knew the gun had fired, but he didn't know where the bullet went. As he looked around the door of his truck, scanning the parking lot full of other people, children that were standing, he looked back to the truck, nothing. No sign of the round hitting anything. Then something caught his eye. There on his shirt, on his lower left side, he went to touch it. He said it felt like someone hit him as hard as they could in his abdomen. It was then that he started to realize that the bullet had in fact hit him. Jason called for help from some of the guys that were there with him, and in true fireman fashion, their initial thought was, "You mean you can't even get the jack out?" Once one of the guys got to him, they realized what had happened was, and initiated the whole 911 process. As Jason lay down in the parking lot, a few more firefighters arrived to help, along with a nurse. All the guys did what they could on scene, and a helicopter was summoned, arrived in under 5 minutes. For those of you that don't know it, the New Braunfels Fire Department does this a lot in the summer. They're really good at it. Not always for firefighters who shoot themselves with their own loaded gun. They took him to Brooke Army Medical Center. Jason was awake and aware of everything the entire time, his abdomen burning like hell, still in denial that this had even happened. Once at the ER, the staff began their evaluation and he was immediately taken to surgery. The next thing he remembered was being pushed through a set of doors, and the first people he saw were the firemen that were there with him at the river. He was taken to a room, filled in on what all was taking place, everything that had happened and everything that would have to be done. Everything was a little blurry, he said, and some of the details run together, probably from the good drugs they had him on. But his brothers there knew he was in good hands. Over the next several days, Jason got to meet a lot of great people. People who, he says, probably have no idea how big of an impact they had on he and his family. Back at the conference, I just arrived, dropped my wife and daughter off at the swimming pool, and was headed to one of the many hospitality rooms. As I entered the hotel, one of my captains approached me with an obvious look of concern on his face and asked, "Have you heard anything about a firefighter being shot or shooting himself?" We immediately assembled a small group and began to lay out a plan. There weren't many details, but the story seemed credible. One of our guys called the New Braunfels Police Department and confirmed our worst fears. Initially, all we knew was a firefighter had been shot with a 30-30 rifle, and he was airlifted to Bamsey in unknown condition. I certainly feared for the worst. I grabbed the TSAFF chaplain, Chris Hale, and headed immediately for San Antonio. We made numerous calls and began to learn more about the injured firefighter. Jason had called. Chief Les Stevens came to the hospital to check on me as well. After making sure I was okay and somewhat out of the woods, Chief Stevens began giving me a lesson on not carrying loaded weapons under the seat of my truck. I don't remember the exact wording, but I'm sure it was something to the effect of what kind of an idiot carries a loaded rifle under his seat. but in all good fireman fun, of course. Jason's family had been notified of the incident and was headed south. Behind the scenes, we began working to secure hotel rooms for his wife and parents. This was one of the first acts that the brotherhood would undertake over the next several days. Jason explained, I'm pretty sure every aspect and minor detail was thought out and taken care of, just as they were doing it for their own flesh and blood. And that's how it should be. San Marcos Professional Firefighter Association President Howie Miner and Grand Prairie's President Jason Ferris had been keeping everyone informed of the situation. They knew Jason's family would be facing some very serious medical bills, so they decided to pass the hat at the conference. They collected over $2,500 just from the people attending the conference. Since Jason was now in San Antonio at the hospital, San Antonio Fire Department got involved as well. Nathan Alonso, who was the legislative rep for the city of San Antonio at the time, played a big part in the future coordination of things. San Antonio Fire Department has a family services division, and they stepped in as well. After the hotel rooms were booked, Nathan Alonso coordinated further rooms for the family as they would be in town for several days. Jason's family had left in such a hurry, and after being notified of the incident, they hadn't had time to pack clothes or many of the necessities. Justin Morris, one of Jason's co-workers from Grand Prairie, went to each of their homes, picked up clothing items, and delivered them all to San Antonio. Another Grand Prairie firefighter, Robert Mazik, contacted his wife, who was working for CareFlight at the time. She worked with the membership department and predated a subscription plan that not only qualified Jason's initial flight from the scene to the ER, but also a return flight from San Antonio to Dallas. Even with the subscription plan and several discounts that were added, the total cost for Jason's flight back home ended up being around $1,400. The Grand Prairie Firefighters Association voted to cover the remaining cost. Until Jason was cleared to return to light duty, the Grand Prairie firefighters had been working to cover some of his shifts, if needed, so that he wouldn't exhaust all of his vacation and sick leave. Jason said, I couldn't write a letter about my chief and his role in this process, but I won't go there. But I didn't say that. Jason's chief didn't call and check on him for 3 days. I went every day, sometimes twice a day. When he did call, he got Jason's voicemail, and on Jason's phone, he left this message. Jason, I'm the fire chief here in Grand Prairie. I was just calling to check and see how things are going. You don't need to call me back. Hey, no shit, you're the fire chief. I work for you. And how things are going, I got shot point blank with a loaded 30-30, and I've been laid up in the hospital for a week and I haven't seen you. That's how things are going, Chief. Thanks for asking. Newsflash, it starts at the top. Be that the top of the organization, the top of the department, or the top of your individual shift or station. The leaders, both formal and informal, set the standard. From hotel rooms to getting clothes delivered, collecting funds, to getting Jason back home, none of that would have been possible without the behind-the-scenes work from my fellow brothers and sisters. And for that, I am forever thankful, Jason says. The second story is about Randy Baker. Randy Baker is a 27-year captain with the Garland Fire Department. He was hired on March 4th, 1991. I know this because we were hired together, same rookie class. Randy was the oldest and I was the youngest recruits of our class. Additionally, Randy served as my lieutenant almost the entire 5 years that I was a station captain, and is one of the absolute best people I've ever had the privilege to know. Throughout Randy's career, he's faced more tragedies than any one person should ever have to. I can still remember the day we were on duty at the fire station. Randy's 2 young kids called, asked for him in a panic, and told him that their mom was having a bad headache, something was wrong, and he needed to get home. Randy rushed home, had her transported to the hospital where it was determined that she had suffered a massive stroke. Kim was dead just 3 days later. A few years later, Randy was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And then, on January 6th, 2015, as if he hadn't been through enough, Randy suffered a severe cardiac event. His fire department was there to help him in every situation in many ways. But in January of 2015, Randy was on board a cruise ship. He was playing in a basketball game on the ship, and by the time, a basketball tournament on the ship, which, by the way, he won the MVP award on. Those of you that may know him won't find that as a surprise. As Randy came off the court after the game, he told his fiancee that he didn't feel well, and he took a seat. He told her to find an aspirin and call for help. He then went into full cardiac arrest. A doctor that was on the cruise initially thought he was only having a seizure. A nurse nearby said, no, he's having a heart attack. The ship's medical crew arrived, started CPR. They worked very hard to keep Randy alive. He arrested a total of 3 times while on board the ship, and they got him back every time. It was 11 hours before they could get him off the ship in Cozumel, Mexico. They continued to keep him alive for 9 days there before he was stable enough that he could be airlifted back to Dallas. Randy stayed in the hospital there till nearly the end of January. Then he began an extensive rehab and returned to the fire station just 4 months later at the end of May. In Randy's own words, the Garland Fire Department, our GFD association, helped me and my family in so many ways that you can't even imagine, and it made the event go so much better than it could have. I don't remember anything until I got back to Dallas. The last thing I remember is getting on the ship. We were on our 3rd day on the cruise when my heart attack happened. The ship's hospital got in touch with Randy's son, and he called a couple of the guys on Randy's crew at the fire station, and they got the ball rolling. They both showed up at his house, and they had to help his son and daughter getting everything they needed to go to Cozumel. They took his son, who needed an expedited passport to Houston to get it so he could go, so he could travel to Mexico to be with his dad. His son, daughter, son-in-law, and a good friend from the Plano Fire Department came immediately to Cozumel to help his fiancee with the arrangements. Back in Garland, the fire department brothers were on the phone, lining up doctors to assume care once he returned to Dallas. They also chartered a plane to get him back home. There was some delay in getting him back as his medical condition was too serious to fly. The association helped with expenses and many other things with his family while they were forced to stay in Mexico. While in Cozumel, several firefighters who were on a cruise of their own had stopped in the same port Andy was in, and they came by to visit Randy, and everything they needed, make sure everything they needed was taken care of. Randy needed blood while he was there. The local firefighters in Cozumel lined up to donate blood on Randy's behalf. Upon returning to Dallas, the doctors were waiting for him and help from the fire department. He was transported to Baylor, Dallas. While in the hospital there was someone from the fire department with Randy around the clock. They had created a schedule, and someone sat there either in his room or in the waiting room the entire time. They worked for him at the station so he would not lose any of his sick leave. They set up a GoFundMe account to help cover the additional expenses that he would have. He says, I'm sure I missed some others, but I cannot be thankful enough to have a family like our brotherhood in my life. I'm very thankful that so many, and we'll never forget it. Thanks again to the brotherhood. It comes down to indoctrination. Indoctrination is to teach someone a belief, doctrine, or ideology thoroughly and systematically, especially with the goal of discouraging independent thought or the acceptance of other opinions. If we're going to teach them what to think, we damn sure better get it right. What should we teach them? Here are just a few things that come to mind. The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. We attend the funerals of our fallen brothers and sisters, job related or not. Why? Because we want someone to attend ours. We attend the funerals of immediate family members of our brothers and sisters. When someone from our station or shift is testing for a promotion, we show up at the promotional examination site and encourage and support them. We drive our sisters and brothers with cancer and other serious medical issues to and from their treatments, and we stay there with them. Hashtag brotherhood on Facebook doesn't cut it. Nothing pisses me off more than to see or hear people brother this or brother that when I know damn good and well they don't walk the walk. We help bathe them, we change their bandages and dressings, we help get them dressed, we tie their shoes because we want them to do it for us. We do not let them sit for days on end in the hospital without seeing a steady stream of familiar faces. We create a schedule and we sit with them. We work for them. We protect their family's benefits, their vacation, their sick leave, because every one of us can spare a couple of extra shifts each year. We open up our wallets and we donate. We buy t-shirts, we buy raffle tickets, we give to GoFundMe accounts because it's much easier for all of us to take on a small hit than it is to leave the burden on just one of our sisters or brothers. We do it because it's the right thing to do. We go to the hospital immediately when we learn of a brother or sister firefighter, police officer, or close family member who's been involved in an accident and is being transported to a facility in our jurisdiction. I'll close with just a couple of short examples of this. Recently, here in the Metroplex, when 2 Arlington firefighters were burned while working a natural gas fire, they were transported to Parkland Hospital. Before they arrived, Dallas Fire Chief David Coatney had been notified and was there to meet them as the ambulances pulled up. Not because they were his guys, not because he had to be there, but because it was the right thing to do. Several months ago, when one of Chief Coatney's own firefighters committed suicide in DeSoto, Chief Duffield explained to Chief Coatney, who had arrived on the scene there, that he and his guys would stay behind to clean up the mother's house so that she wouldn't have to see the scene when she got home. Chief Coatney kindly declined and stayed there to assist. He explained to Chief Duffield he wanted to help because it was his guy and it was the right thing to do. Brotherhood is not a spectator sport. We have to get up and make something happen. I know each of you can easily make a list of 10 or more things that can be added to this. You can do that because you are the ones who get it. Your challenge now is to go back and influence the members of your organization. If they're failing, it's your fault. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for what you do each and every day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this great symposium.